Welcome to this video. In this video, we will learn over 10 useful tips and tricks for SAP users. These tips will help you in your daily work with the SAP system, so with SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA. Enjoy this video. Let's get started. If you would like to log in into your SAP system, then normally you start the SAP logon, the program to log in into your SAP system, and there you double click on one connection. After that, you type in your SAP username and your password, and then you are logged in the SAP system and can start working. Honestly, I think that there is an easier way and a faster way that you should use to log in into your SAP system. And in the menu bar, there you can see this button to generate a so-called shortcut. So once you've clicked on this button, then a new window will open up to set up a SAP GUI shortcut. And with a SAP GUI shortcut, there you can execute a transaction, a system command, and a report. And for example, if you select transaction, then the transaction will be executed. And if you are not logged in the SAP system, then you can log in into the SAP system and the transaction will be started. So this is really fast and helps you in your daily work with the SAP system. Under title, there you can type in your needed title that should be shown in the shortcut on your local computer. Just for demo purposes, I leave it like this. Under the type, there you, as mentioned, can select between three different types, between a transaction, between system command and a report. I would like to call a transaction. And under transaction, there you can enter the transaction code that should be executed once you've double clicked on the SAP GUI shortcut. And because we have clicked on this button out of the SAP Easy Access menu, the default transaction code will be filled in. If you want to, you can also type in another transaction code, for example, the MyRow or the SE16N for the data browser, what you prefer. In my case, I would use the data browser, the SE16N. Under system description, there you can select your system that is available in the SAP logon based on your connections. And down here, you can specify the client, the user, and the logon language that should be used to call this transaction or to log in into your SAP system. And keep in mind that you can change your SAP user once you've double clicked on the SAP GUI shortcut, but you can't change your client and your language. So if you are using multiple clients with different languages, then you have to set up different SAP GUI shortcuts. And the user can be changed afterwards, but this is the default value of the user. And the location, there you can specify the location where this SAP GUI shortcut should be saved on your local computer. And once you've clicked on this finish button, then the SAP GUI shortcut will be created on your local computer and is ready to be executed. So now what we can see is this, that the SAP GUI shortcut has been created and is ready to be used. Currently, I am still logged in the SAP system. So if I would double click on this SAP GUI shortcut, then the data browser will be opened up. So I would like to show you this. I double click and here we jump to the data browser. So when I log off with the shortcut /NEX and then double click on this SAP GUI shortcut, then a new pop-up will occur so that you can enter your username and your password. And now once again, the data browser has been executed. And here we can see that no pop-up occurs for the SAP GUI security because I have selected the checkbox to remember my decision to access the call from the SAP GUI shortcut to the SAP system. But if a pop-up occurs, then you can just click on the Axis or Allow button in the left side, and you can remember your decision. Favorites are really useful and important in your daily work with SAP system. So as you here can see that I have already created two favorites, one for the Miro for entering incoming invoices and the SE16N for the data browser. And they are all grouped in the favorites folder, and there you can also use other operations with your right mouse click on it, and there you can open the folder, you can delete all favorites, you can insert a new folder, you can insert a transaction, and you can add other objects. And this is really useful because if you want to execute a transaction, then first of all, you have to execute and enter your transaction code in the command field, or you can double click on one node, on one transaction code in this tree structure in the area menu. And so the favorites are really important to execute your transaction codes really easily with a double click. So for example, if I double click on this transaction code for a data browser, IC16N, then I would jump into this transaction. As we have already seen, with your right mouse click on this favorites folder and then insert a transaction, there you can insert a new transaction. So for example, the SE16, also a transaction for the data browser. Or what you also can do is you can add other objects. So for example, if you would like to access an URL, so then you can double click on this one. Here you can type in the text which should be shown. So for example, ERP app. Under web address or file, there you can specify the link, the web address, or your directory to a specific file. In my case, to my German speaking SAP blog. So https://erp-app.de. And once you've clicked on this button or you have used the enter key on your keyboard, then this favorite has been added to this folder, and via double click then you will jump to my German, in this case, SAP blog. Once you've clicked on this, then a pop-up for the SAP GUI security will open up, because now the SAP GUI is trying to access your local computer, in this case the browser. And here you can remember your decision and click on allow. And now we can see that this URL has been opened up to my German speaking SAP blog. What is also really important, that you can share your favorites menu. So in the menu function favorites, there you have also the functionalities for adding, for changing, for moving, and for deleting favorites. But what you also can do is you can download your favorites menu to your local PC. And on the other way around, you can upload a favorites menu from your PC. So this is really helpful, especially if you would like to share your favorites menu with other colleagues, or if you would like to import a favorites menu from another colleague. Another really useful tip is to create favorites out of a transaction. I would like to show you this. I open up a new transaction, the FBL1N. It is a transaction for displaying vendor line items, and in here you can use a shortcut to create favorites directly out of a transaction instead of using the add operation on the favorites folder. And to do this, here you can type in %_GCADDF. So once again, %_GCADDF. And once you've hit the enter key on your keyboard, then now nothing happens. But if you move one step back, then here we see that now this favorite has been added to your favorites folder. I highly recommend to use SAP Variants. So SAP Variants help you in a daily work with the SAP system, because with SAP Variants there you can reuse previously entered inputs in the selection criterias, and in here we are in a transaction code for displaying vendor line items, and in this bar there we see a button to get a SAP variant, or you could also use the key combination Shift and F5. Once you've clicked on this button, there a window will open up, and there you can with double click select one created and one existing SAP variant, or you can select and click on one entry and then use this button. And what we now see that some of the entries have been overridden by other values, and this is really helpful, especially if you would like to execute multiple times a selection report. Then you can create SAP variants with this Save as Variant button with your inputs, and for example with this button there you can get your variant, and that you don't have to enter your inputs multiple times and once again. If this button is not visible, then under Go To and Variants, there you have the needed operations. And I will reference to a video that I have published and created about SAP Variants, and there you can get a detailed overview of SAP Variants. So basically you have two options to execute a transaction. The first one is that you type in the transaction code in the command field to move to another transaction code. So for example, the transaction SE16N, and there we enter in the data browser. The second one is that you use the favorites folder or the area menu, in this case the SAP ECXS menu, and then you open a folder and a note and double click on one transaction, and then you can also open up a transaction. And by the way, a very useful tip is to use prefixes. So for example, /n allows you to move from one transaction to the other transaction. So for example, in here I would like to move through the data browser SE16N, and in here you have to use the prefix /n, because if you would not use this prefix, then you can't move to the transaction. Then you have to go one step back to the SAP ECXS menu and then type it in without a prefix. But if you are in a transaction, then you have to use this prefix. If you would like to open up a transaction in a new window, then you have to use the prefix /o. But if we move back to the standard area menu, the SAP ECXS menu, there you can search within this menu, and you can search with the term search underscore SAP underscore menu in the command field, and then enter. A new window will open up where you can enter a search text, and in our case I would like to search for invoice in this case. So I type in invoice and then I click on this button, or you could also hit the enter key on your keyboard. And now what we can see is all the nodes that contain invoice in the text. So for example, this one, this one, this one, and also the well-known transaction Miro. If you would like to select one, then you can use Control and Y, and then you can move over this field, and with Control C, then you can copy it, and with Control V, then you can paste it in. If we're going one step back, then here we now see that in nodes there we can see the transaction code, in this case SBWP, and you can activate this setting under extras and settings, or you could also use the key combination Shift and F9. And here you can select the checkbox display technical names. And for example, if I set this to inactive, deselected, and then continue, then what we can now see that the transaction code is gone, is invisible. and just the description is visible, but again under extras and settings, there we can activate it once again. Here we are in the transaction ME23N to display purchase orders. And here I would like to show and explain you the very important F1 help. The F1 help can be executed with the F1 key on your keyboard. So to use this there, you have to click on one element in the DIM Pro and then use the F1 key on your keyboard. And once you've done this, then the Performance Assistant will open up and there you can see a documentation for this field. So especially if you do not know what the logic and what the field is about, then you can just hit the F1 key and there you can read the description. There are also some links, for example, for goods receipts, and then you can click on this one and then you will move over to this one. So this is really important and I can recommend to use this. If you want to, there you can click on this button technical information and then you can get the technical information about this field. So for example, in what kind of structure this is in use, what is the field name, and so on. What you also can do is directly you can open up the glossary, you can move to the SAP Help portal, and you can also print it if you want to. If you would like to set the focus to a button, so for example this one, but you don't want to execute the logic behind, then you can click on this button and then you can move the cursor away from this button and then you can move your finger away from the mouse click, and then you have not executed the logic but you have set the focus to this element, and then you can also hit the F1 key on your keyboard. The F4 help is, in my opinion, the most important help in the SAP system, and it can be used and executed by hitting the F4 key on your keyboard. So in here we are in transaction MM03 to display materials in the SAP system. And in here you can see that the F4 help is available on this loop icon right next to this input field, and there you can execute the F4 help also by clicking on this button, or as mentioned, by setting the focus into this input field and then hitting the F4 key on your keyboard. And then what we can see is that a window will open up where you can enter some selection criteria, some search terms to search your needed value in the SAP system. So for example, we would like to search for materials where ARM is in the material description. And then you can also use some wildcard searches, for example, asterisks, to search for multiple characters or the plus sign for one character, but it doesn't matter what the character is. So for example, ARM and asterisk, and then you can click on the start search button to search your value. And in here, you, for example, by double clicking, then you can take over this value and then directly the ID of this material will be filled in into this field. Once again, if we hit the F4 key, then here you can see that you have many options to search for materials. If you changed this field for the maximum number of hits, then you will restrict your search to this amount. This could be quite useful. And what I really recommend to use is the equal sign. So for example, if you're using the equal sign, then you directly use the F4 help instead of clicking this button or hitting the F4 key on your keyboard. And it is quite useful if there is just one entry for your search term, then directly the ID will be put in this field. So for example, if I type in this search term and then hit the enter key on my keyboard, then what you maybe recognize is that the ID motors will be directly filled into this field. If there are multiple entries, as we have seen for ARM, then you will get the list of all the entries for this search term. And in here, what we can see is directly the SAP system adds an asterisk sign in here to do a wildcard search. So you don't need to put an asterisk behind your search term. It is automatically put after this search term. What I really recommend is to display the keys within drop-down lists. Here we are in the transaction MyGo for posting goods receipts for purchase orders, for example. And in here we see two drop-down fields, one for the transaction or event, and the second one for the reference document. And if we click on this drop-down there, we just see the explanation of this field, the description, and not the real ID or value of this field. The same is for this reference document number. And in this case, I think it's quite obvious, you know what this description is about, but in other cases, you don't know what the value is about and you want to know what the ID is behind the description. And you can activate this setting quite easily in the SAP GUI option. So you can reach the SAP GUI options by clicking on this customize local layout button and then options, or you could also go to your SAP logon, then click in the top left corner and choose options. Under interaction design and visualization 1, there under controls you have the settings to show the keys within drop down lists. So once you've clicked on this and hit apply and OK, then the ID, the keys will be shown. I also recommend to activate the checkbox to sort the values by the keys. It is also quite useful. Again, with apply and OK, this will be taken over. And for example, if we execute the MyGo once again, then you directly see the outcome. Now we can see the idea, the value behind this description. I also highly recommend to set up your fixed values, your default values for your SAP user to show numbers and dates and times in the needed format. And you can reach your user profile with the transaction code SU3 in the command field. Or what you also can use is under the menu function system, user profile, and user data. You open up the maintenance for your user profile. And in the tab defaults, there you can set up your needed fixed values for your SAP user. Under the start menu, there you could enter an area menu that you would like to open up first after you have logged in the SAP system. So if we log in now the default area menu, the SAP ECXS menu will be shown. It's the S000, but also you can enter a different area menu, for example, W, E, the I for the transactions around the IDOC processing. In the logon language, there you can enter your logon language if your logon language in the SAP logon is empty and is not filled in. So in my case, it's EN for English. In the decimal notation, this is quite important to set up your decimal notation depending where you live and how you would like to show numbers. So depending if you would like to separate the thousands with a dot or a comma. Under date format, there you specify how the dates should be shown and used in the SAP system. And under time format, there you can decide how the time should be shown in the SAP system. And keep in mind that this has no input in the real data in the database tables. It's just to work with the inputs and the outputs, but on the database tables, they are all the same. And here, normally you can leave it like they are, but basically here you can make some changes for the spool control. So for your printing settings and the personal time zone, you can set up your personal time zone. And once you've made some changes and click on this save button, or you can also use the Control S key combination, then these values are saved. So now what we can see now, I typed in the area menu WEDI, and now we see that I am using the area menu EDI. And to show you the different formats, I open up a transaction, the Miro, for entering incoming invoices. And in here, I am entering the today's date, and you can use the combination F4 key and F2 key to fill in directly the today's date. You don't have to type it in manually. This is quite useful, by the way. And under amount, I type in this amount, and now we see the two different formats for dates and amounts. It is also quite useful to communicate with other SAP users directly within the SAP system. And to show you this, I have logged in to the SAP system with two different SAP users. And now you can execute a function module to send a message to another user. And for this, you have to execute the transaction code SE37 in the command field. And then here you have to enter th underscore pop-up to execute and send some messages to other SAP users. And with this button, test execute, or the F8 key on your keyboard, then you can execute it. And here you have to enter specific information. So for example, on the client, there you enter the client and that you are currently logged in and that you want to send some messages to another user. And I'm currently in the 400 client. To user, there you type in the user ID to whom you want to send a message, and under message there you have to type in the message that should be sent to the user. So in this case, do you want to go to lunch? And then you can click on this execute button, or you could also use the F8 key on your keyboard. And then now the right SAP user has received this pop-up, and now we see the message and from whom this message was sent. Another way how you can send messages is in the SAP Business Workplace. So it's the transaction SBWP. Or what you also can do is in the SAP Easy Access menu, there you can click on this button, or you could also use the key combination Control F12 to open it up. And with the button New Message or the key combination Shift and F4, then this window will open up to create documents and send it. What you also could do is you could use a transaction code S000, and there you will end up in the exactly same transaction. And under title, there you can type in the title that you want to use in your message. So for example, demo. Under document contents, there you enter the content that you want to send. So for example, do you want to go to lunch? And under recipient, there you enter the SAP user ID. So in my case, Andreas G2. And now you can select this column to send this message as an express message. And then you can directly click on this send button, or you could also use the key combination Shift and F8. And then if the other SAP user makes some actions, then you will see this express message. So for example, I go to the SAP Business Workplace and now we see this express document. And if I double click, then I see what the content is about, who is the creator, when was it sent, and so on. The bottom area is really useful and important for your daily work with the SAP system. So in the bottom right area, there you can see the system information. By clicking on this white triangle, then the system information will open up. And in our case, we are seeing the transaction code, which I have executed and am currently running. With this dark triangle, then you can choose another information that should be shown in this bottom area. For example, if you would like to show the system, the client, the user, the program, as we know, see the transaction, and so on. I personally recommend to select the transaction, but if you click on one other entry, then this information will be shown in there. So for example, the user. In the bottom left area, there you will see success messages, warnings, and error messages. So for example, to show you this, I move over to the data browser, the transaction SE16N. And in here, I raise the maximum number of hits. And then down here, we see that now a success message is shown, but it is normally a warning or should be seen as a warning. But in here, you will see also really useful and important information. And especially if you are a SAP beginner, then you should keep an eye also at the bottom area of your SAP GUI. And depending on your settings and your used SAP theme, the system information could also be shown at the top. A start transaction is really useful in your daily work with SAP systems, so with SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA. After you have logged in into the SAP system, a start transaction will be started. Of course, you can move also to another transaction by using the prefix /n and then a transaction code, so for example the Miro, but this makes you faster and there you can directly start working with your transaction. In the start menu in the SAP EasyAccess, there you can set up a start transaction under extras and set start transaction, or you could also use the key combination Shift and F7. And in here you can enter your start transaction. So for example, the Miro, and with this button or the enter key on your keyboard, then you can take it over and then you have set up a start transaction. If you want to change this, again, under extras, set start transaction, you can change it to another transaction code. So for example, the data browser SE16N, then this has been changed. If you want to reset it and delete the start transaction, then under extras, set start transaction, then you can delete it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned 10 quite useful tips and tricks for SAP users. Hit the like button, add a comment and subscribe for free, and then see you in the next video.